Did Kevin Jennings, the coaching staff, or both mess something up over the offseason with trying to get him better for his first season as the starter?
You are Locked On SMU, your daily podcast on the SMU Mustangs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On SMU, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. I'm Grayson Singleton. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day, and as well for spending half an hour or so with me. Our episode today is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We'll tell you more about that later on in the show. Speaking of later on in the show, coming up, the defensive front, I've got some numbers on this. They've been really good. And when you have a really good defensive front, that can win you a lot of games. Plus, Rhett Lashlee spoke to the media about the slow start. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. But you know what? Let's go ahead and get started with Kevin Jennings. And we talked about the really goods and then the curious bads from Kevin Jennings yesterday. Talked about how when he's throwing deep, he's pretty good. When he's throwing outside the numbers toward the boundary, he is really accurate, but sometimes he misses a lot of layups. But there's something else in his game that I think has curiously gone by the wayside, and that's him using his legs and his mobility. And I've got some numbers on that I'm going to give you in just a second. But just by the eye test and the naked eye, Kevin Jennings is not running the ball as much. He's not using that athleticism. There was one time he used it and got tripped by the official. But for the most part, the electric side of him that we thought was going to still be there in conjunction with improved passing just hasn't been there. He hasn't run the ball as much. He hasn't ran it as effectively. So here's the numbers. So far this season, he's ran the ball 24 times for 17 yards. He's got a touchdown. So that's less than a yard per carry. Through 3 starts in 2024, he ran the ball 29 times, so 5 more times, but for 166 yards and a touchdown. He also had longs in each of those 3 games, the first 3 games he started. He had a long of 17 yards, of 15 yards, and a 59-yarder against Florida State. This year, he has a long of 15 yards, and that's it. There is a very, very clear difference between Kevin Jennings last year running the football and Kevin Jennings now running the football. And I think there was a mistake made either by him, by the coaching staff, or by both. And that is they have taken away something that he was really good at that adds an extra dimension to the SMU offense. Now, I'm not saying you need to be running quarterback power or design quarterback sweeps or anything like that, but I do think just in watching that the way he scrambles looks different. And it's one of 2 things. Either he's gotten slower, which he's 22 years old and not coming off of any major injuries, so I'm reluctant to believe that that's the case. The other thing is, has this been coached out of him? Because when the play broke down, he was able to zig and zag and wiggle and take off, get you a first down. He's just not doing a whole lot of that, quite frankly, against teams that he should be able to do some of that against, especially East Texas A&M and Missouri State. And sometimes in the concerted effort to make people a pocket quarterback, you try so hard to do it, and the player wants to become a pocket quarterback because it's easier to fit in systems and learn how to play on time and do all that, so on and so forth. You all know what we're talking about. That it takes away what makes them great. You want to build the pocket presence and the ability to throw from the pocket up to the level of the athleticism and mobility. You don't want it to be a this. You want here, not up and down, up and down. But that seems to be what's been going on with Kevin Jennings now, is that he's just not running the ball. And here's why I lead off our show with this, is because, look, the pass protection has been decent at best. It's been decent. There's been some times where it's been less than decent. But overall, if I had to say, all right, what's the best this offensive line in terms of pass pro has looked? I would say it's been decent. Not great to this point in time. There's going to be times where Kevin's going to need to, got to get out of here and make a play for myself. And right now, I don't know if it's in his mentality to do that. Maybe something clicks later on down the line. He's like, I can actually do this. But for the most part, even when he's scrambling, it just doesn't seem like he's getting down the field and making stuff happen. He's scrambling, yes, to look to throw, and that's awesome. But it has seemed like he has been handcuffed with other things that he can do. And to me, what makes an offense special, and you look at the best offenses right now in college football, what makes those offenses the most unpredictable is that the quarterback ultimately can take it down and run. The Heisman favorite right now in many people's minds, John Mateer at Oklahoma. Now, Kevin Jennings is not built like John Mateer. John Mateer is 30 pounds heavier, but John Mateer's ability to run poses some problems. When Lenoris Sellers is right, it's the same thing with South Carolina. Cade Klubnik, even though he hadn't looked that great, what did he do a lot last year? We all knew he could throw from the pocket, but also that dude could also take off and run by your linebackers. Kevin Jennings still has that same type of speed. He can get away from linebackers. He can take on a corner every now and then. So the fact that he hasn't done that, to me, is interesting. And it's not as if you get to conference play and then encourage the quarterback to say, all right, man, we're in the meat of our schedule, go take off. That's not usually something you're going to see a coach do. Usually, you try to rein them back in as you start to play the meat of your schedule, not the opposite way. So I think there is a legitimate question as to whether or not that's going to come back. But I think it's going to have to, because if the receivers aren't open, and this is, again, you're going to play teams with good cornerback play. Miami, good cornerback play. Miami got the top corner in the portal this year. Ethan O'Connor, transfer from Washington State. And he doesn't even start for them. He was excellent at Washington State, was the best corner in the portal, and he doesn't even start. Clemson, say what you want about them, that defense has been pretty solid, and they still got Avion Terrell, who's regarded as one of, if not the best corner prospect in the NFL draft next year. So you're going to play against teams that can cover people. What are you going to be able to do when nobody gets open? You got to be able to create. And I'm sure he can. I'm sure he didn't get less athletic. I don't think that happened. He's too young to get less athletic. Too young and too good of a shape. But the numbers don't lie here. Carries are down 5. Yards are down 100 and whatever. The numbers say it right there. He's not running. Now, can we say that we're glad that he's made the improvements playing on schedule and getting the ball out? Sure. But there will come a time. There will come a time when the on-schedule plays are taken away, and the best quarterbacks, when it comes to elevating a team, can play off schedule and make something special happen for their guys. Not every play, maybe not even once a quarter, but once or twice a game, there will come those pivotal moments where you got to go make a play. Will he be able to do it? Will he even try to do it? That remains to be seen, but it's one of the observations I've had through the first 3 weeks of the season. Coming up next, the defensive front. I found more supporting numbers as to why this front has been so good and why it could lead SMU to better pastures down the line. Talk about that on the other side. Keep it here on Locked On SMU. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right choice can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right means you can win you some money too. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than a minute. I've been playing Prize Picks lately. It's a fun way to stay locked in for the season. We got a Monday Night Football game. I'll probably throw in a couple of player props on that one. You guys know me. I love my player props and love betting higher or lower on those. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right, welcome back to Locked On SMU. Grayson Singleton here. By the way, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitter at Gray_Singleton2. Would love to interact with all of you there. Let's keep growing this community, everybody. Okay, so the defense looks rather good. And it's a pretty interesting conundrum between the front 7 and the back 4, or the front 6 and the back 5, whatever. However you want to phrase it. But the defensive front, I want to focus on this, and I've got numbers for this, man. The defensive front has been really, really good. So you want to start with the defending the pass or defending the run? Okay, let's talk about defending the pass. 9 sacks has SMU's defense. 9 sacks through 3 games. Pretty good. Remember, when you're not playing against the greatest competition, what do I want to see? I want to see you dominate. And 3 sacks per game against East Texas A&M, Baylor, and Missouri State. That'll play. That'll play. Cam Robertson looks good. Mba looks good. Webb has looked good in spurts as well. The defensive line looks like it's going to be pretty good. Isaiah Smith has looked pretty good at times. I am very comfortable with what I've seen from that on that front. Of the 9 sacks, 6.5 are by defensive linemen. I think Justin Medlock has 1. Ahmad Moses has 1, and then there's another guy somewhere. But 6.5 of the 9 sacks have been by defensive linemen, which means, guess what? If you take out that final couple of drives against Baylor where Scott Simons was like, let's just sit and prevent defense and let Baylor walk us down, they've gotten pressure with 4 pretty well. They have gotten pressure with 4. They will bring pressure every now and then from the linebackers, but they don't necessarily need to and are not reliant upon it to make the quarterback uncomfortable. So that's a good sign. Also, when SMU gets people into third down and medium to long, which is where a lot of the third downs have come from against the SMU defense, they're doing pretty good. Teams have only converted 18 of their 60 third downs against SMU's defense. That's 30%. You can live with that. That'll play. If you can continue that on through the season, you're going to be able to get guys like Carson Beck and Cade Klubnik and Miller Moss and whoever else you play off the field. That's a really good sign. So that's defending the pass. What about defending the run? Well, SMU, by the way, is in the top 5, I believe, in the ACC in yards per game allowed on the ground. Just over 100. I think they're at 107, I believe is what it is. They're no lower than 7th in the conference. How about yards per carry? Giving up 3. Giving up 3 yards per carry. That is, you would have to run it 4 times to get a first down. 3.02 is the exact number. That'll play. And when you have an excellent defensive line up front, obviously that changes the game plan on the other side. You don't run it as effectively. Therefore, you become one-dimensional. If you have to telegraph that you're going to throw the ball on almost every single play, as long as those dudes aren't tired, that means guys like Cam Robertson and guys like Isaiah Smith and DJ Warner can pin their ears back and get after your quarterback. By the way, they've got a good interior rush too with Terry Webb and Joseph Mba. So having a great defensive front really sets you up for a lot of success. Why this matters most for SMU, though, is because not only was the secondary bad in the first 2 games, now the secondary is getting readjusted to having some guys shuffled around. Now, we'll see if those changes stand throughout the entirety of the season, but it's a secondary right now that, to put it mildly, is in flux. So a great defensive line can mitigate the struggles that you're going to have to some degree. So again, this is one thing they've got to keep up. They have to keep up the pressure. They have to keep up the fact that they are hard to run the ball on. And I'm going to give the defensive line credit for this. They had that quarterback for Missouri State running all over the place for his life on Saturday. He was running all over the place. Didn't have anywhere to go. And that's a symptom of a good team taking on an inferior team. You need to dominate with the big guys up front, and they did that. They took care of their business. So I gotta shout them out for that as well. But the way I look at this going forward is you're going to play quarterback starting this week. You got Josh Hoover on your schedule. You got Klubnik on your schedule. You got Beck, who looks like he could contend for the Heisman, on your schedule. All of those guys, by the way, especially Clemson and Miami, have good receivers, have really good receivers that can hurt you. Especially, I mean, that's even before we talk about that your secondary is right now teetering on being a liability. So if you can make those quarterbacks uncomfortable, Klubnik has already shown that he can be ineffective and in some way neutralized. You make those guys ineffective, they start to look like a shell of themselves. Who knows where this offense has to turn? Well, maybe they turn to the run game. Well, you've been really good at that. 3 yards per carry. That's pretty good. 321 yards on 106 carries is what SMU has allowed. So you're in a really good spot there. But if you make it hard for people to move the ball on you, and again, their toughest challenges are ahead of them. That Miami team, I don't know if anybody's watched them, but that Miami team's good. That front for Miami offensively is big and physical and nasty. That's your barometer. That will be your barometer. You get that game at home, but that's where we're going to be able to really tell how good SMU's defensive line is going to be. But the early returns are good. And when you get through this cupcake part of the schedule, I know they had Baylor in there, but you had 2 teams that are far inferior. You want the numbers to really look good. Because at this point, really nobody has played a whole lot of anybody. I mean, LSU, they're kind of hanging on to where they are just because they've beaten Clemson on the road and beat Florida. So their resume looks right now a lot better than everybody else's. But for the most part, maybe you've played one game against a really good team so far. So you've got to make sure those numbers are where they need to be. And SMU's defensive line has done it. And will they need to step up their level of play? Absolutely. Have I seen anything that would make me question whether they're not going to do that? No, I have not. So that they can lead SMU to some wins this year. And if you watch the Baylor game and you're like, yep, I'm going to throw in the towel, season's over, patience. I would caution you against that. Because when you have a good defensive front, that can mask a lot. Especially if you can make another team's quarterback uncomfortable after you make that team's offense one-dimensional. All right, coming up next, Rhett Lashlee spoke to the media, and he talked about the slow start to the Missouri State game. What did he say? What do I think about it? Coming up next, we'll close up shop here on Locked On SMU. College football is back, and I can't be more excited for the tailgates, the rivalries, energy in the stands, tradition, the tribalism, just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. It's all bad, right? We hate it. But that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to you, the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. Guys, I've been using Game Time for a couple of years now, and it's awesome for anything. Major League and minor league baseball, NBA games, college football, man. I always use Game Time. And one of my favorite things about Game Time is that I can see what the view is going to be like from the seat before I even purchase the ticket. It's dope. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. Final segment here on Locked On SMU. Welcome back as we close up shop here. All right, Rhett Lashlee did speak to the media after the game, and he talked about how slow and sluggish SMU was getting out of the gate. And here's what he had to say. We just settled down and started playing. We were running basic plays early in the game. Everybody is going to think about the interception or Romelo's fumble, but we're running base plays and not blocking the D tackle or not blocking the D end with our tight end or quarterback is taking a sack out of the pocket. A lot of really uncharacteristic poor execution is what I would say. It wasn't that we weren't playing hard. I'm going to stop there because there's also more to that quote that is actually pertinent to SMU. But if there is a silver lining to the slow start, it's not that they were, jet lagged or slept walk into the game or weren't playing hard. They just made mistakes. Simple as that. And that's why the appropriate word for describing SMU so far at certain points in the season has been sloppy. They've just been sloppy. And at least, the head coach isn't going out here and saying, yeah, there were just some instances of guys not playing hard. That's the last thing you want to see. You don't want to see that. But if it's just, hey, man, we were just sloppy. A coach can harp on that and harp on it and harp on it in practice, and eventually your execution can get buttoned up, as long as that's not the defining characteristic of the team. Now, some teams are just straight up sloppy. Some teams are. But I would like to assume that that's not going to be this SMU team as we go on through the season. I would like to believe that. But when I hear a coach just say, going back to the quote, we just settled down and started playing, you probably were pressing a little bit, which why were you pressing against Missouri State? There ain't that many people in the stadium. Again, it's Missouri State. Maybe you were just hyped up just to be playing a football game. And if that's the case, I can deal with that. I can accept that. If he just said, look, we're settled, we just got to settle in and start playing, you know what? Cool, man. That's cool. That's dudes that love to play football, and they got a little bit out of character. If that's the case, then great. But the flip side to that is that at certain points of games, in all three of them, you looked sloppy. Started the East Texas A&M first half. 8 penalties in the first half. Sloppy. The end of the Baylor game, the tackling got bad. Now, maybe attrition had to do with that because the defense played a hell of a lot of snaps. But still, sloppy. They also kind of got a little sloppy in the schematics of that, too. And then you start off the first quarter of this past game just sloppy. At some point, you got to figure out how to play 4 solid quarters. And to me, if you're Rhett Lashlee, you've demonstrated yourself to be able to build a good offensive culture. You have hired and maintained a good relationship with a good, solid defensive coordinator. You have instilled leadership onto this team through the players. But you got to figure out a way for this team to play 4 good quarters of football. Period. End of story. Especially in a conference like the ACC where, man, if you can put together 4 quarters, the volatility of the teams in this league, you could run the table. Like, let's be real. I know Miami looks really, really good right now, and I keep saying it. They look really good to me, but their coach is Mario Cristobal. Okay? He's not necessarily known for being the most buttoned-up coach historically. So, if you got that, and you got a Clemson team that we don't know what we're going to get week in and week out, Louisville, still a lot of an unknown. And most of the schedule is, quite frankly, not good teams. You got to be able to be buttoned up and play 4 good quarters. Now, I'm not saying you got to be perfect and not make any mistakes. That's impossible. But you got to make sure your dudes are ready off the bus to be able to come out and execute early. Hopefully, they've gotten all of that out of their system by now. The rest of the quote goes like this, by the way. Poor execution is going to lead to a holding penalty, a hands to the face penalty. I love the fact that we're trying to be physical, but you can't crack block anymore. You go and knock a guy out, they're going to call a penalty on you. You get 10, 15-yard penalties, it's hard for anybody to maintain a drive. First 2 drives, it was turnovers. After that, it was penalties. We kept getting in our own way. And sometimes, I'll say this, what really cripples good teams is not always injuries. It's not always coaching malfunctions. Sometimes it's just getting in your own way. And what he said about the penalties is right. 10-yard and 15-yard penalties are drive killers. They make it nearly impossible with the way people fly around in closed space these days to maintain and sustain a drive when you are putting yourself behind the sticks. And it just comes back to execution. So, look, I think the onus is on Rhett to make sure that execution has been a focal point in practice, and also making sure that when we get off the bus and we're in the locker room and we're putting our pads on and we're going out for warm-ups, that everything we do from the time we enter whatever bowels of the stadium you are in has to be detailed oriented, from the stretches to your warm-ups to your routines to everything. Because it starts there, and then maybe, just maybe, that mindset can carry you onto the field, and you won't have a start against a good team that you may not be able to rebound from, but maybe you won't have that same start that you did against Missouri State. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On SMU here on a Tuesday. Thank you so much for making me your first listen of the day. It's another big moment for Locked On as we keep telling you about Locked On and Fire TV's collaboration to present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. You guys know Drake Toll from Locked On Big 12. He joins AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, Jesse Holly, and Locked On's local experts. It's a college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Take it easy, everybody.